All right, we are now live. I want to say good evening to everyone that may be seeing my face on Facebook right now. Once you see my face, you know what time it is. It is Cup Fest, the 6 p.m. edition. This is Sheena, your Caribbean College Planner at the Student Center. And we are going to be talking about scholarships, some free money, how to get it, what is realistic, especially if you are going to be on a visa or a study permit. Our job here today is to explain a few things that will be helpful to you as you go through this process, as you find, apply, and enroll in your chosen school and program. Now, to help me do this, I have my good friend Juanita. She's representing York University. You may have seen us live last week talking about York University, and we're going to talk about scholarships. And I know Juanita is going to sometimes share information on scholarships available at York University. So I'm going to explain to you how this session is going to work, because we want you to ask us questions, because this is for you to get your questions heard and answered, and we're going to answer them as best as possible. So no matter which country you are interested in, we're going to give you a general overview. We're going to talk about certain things you need to be mindful of when it comes to education, especially education abroad, and you're looking to finance your way through it, and you're looking at potentially financing via a scholarship, the realities of that process, what to really consider as you plan and you start looking for schools, thinking about your programs, destinations. Every destination is different. So for those of you joining me on Zoom, there is a Q&A icon located on your Zoom panel, and there's also a chat icon located on your Zoom panel. Put your questions there, and we are going to answer them as they come, so you don't have to wait to the end of anything. We're going to answer them throughout the session. So really think about what you want to ask us. We are here to assist you. If you are joining us via Facebook, put your questions through the comment section. I promise I will try to get to them before the session is out. If you are joining us, before we even get started, if we want to know which countries you are from, if you won't mind, if you're joining us on Zoom, put them in the chat option. Tell us which Caribbean countries you're located in this evening. Don't worry, we don't bite. Just put them in the chat or the Q&A. All right, we have Barbados in the house. Guyana. Oh, nice. It's one of my favorite countries to travel to, from Barbados. Grenada. Oh, Trinidad. Hi, Sherry Ann. We have some TTs in here, TNTs in here. Nice to see the Trini crew. And I know some of you would have met Juanita in Trinidad over the weekend. Hope you had some good chat. So we have a nice, good CARICOM friendly group in here this evening. Thanks for indulging me in that. I hope I caught everybody. Oh, we have St. Kitts and Nevis. That's a very beautiful island, twin island state. You have St. Lucia. All right. So a good crowd. So you have a good crowd with us, all from the Caribbean. So if you have a notepad, pen, or paper, you need to have that, because I'm going to make some interesting points before I start asking some questions to Juanita about scholarships. Okay. So one thing is, if you are looking to use scholarships to help finance your education, you have to be mindful of a few things. It will vary by the country that you're looking at. And I'm going to speak very clear with you, because I can in this forum right now, since I'm leading this forum this evening. Some countries are more generous than others because of how their setup is, because reality is, one of these, if it's the only thing you remember from me this evening, education is a business. So schools do not run on smiles and good intentions. They run on money. So you have to be mindful of that. So education is a business. Now, scholarships and the availability of scholarships for students that will require a visa or a study permit will be different. So for example, if you're looking at the US, and I know the US is known for showcasing large scholarships, and you hear those stories about I received $3 million worth up to scholarships. The one thing you have to remember is context. The person receiving these scholarships sometimes are they're citizen, they have citizenship or permanent residency in the country, even if they have Caribbean roots. When you do dig in, there's a lot more behind that. So things are not always at face value. That's one thing that you need to be mindful of. Now, if you're an athlete, if you have a special talent, sometimes, yes, that can get you certain types of scholarships, especially if you're looking at the US for sports, which is a very popular destination for athletes and talented persons to go to. But they're highly competitive, and there's a difference between if it's a team sport or an individual sport and how the money is allocated. So you have to and you have to be on your A game, because everybody's great when they're playing for scholarships. Now, England is a little bit different, and I find out of the 3 major destinations that our students tend to look at, which would be Canada number 1, then the US, and then the UK. There may be instances for some scholarships, but very rare, even at the postgraduate level. Now, last week we had a session, I think it was last week, yes, on Chevening, which is a full paid scholarship. Now, these are great, but there are parameters. So sometimes with the full scholarships, if it's developmental in nature and is by government, I know some of you are looking to also go abroad to hopefully stay on and work afterwards and maybe stay further. You can't do that on those types of scholarships. So you have to be very mindful of a full scholarship, especially if it's government funded. There are conditions, and it usually means you're going to have to come home. So you have to ask yourself a question. What is my end goal? Is it that I am going abroad to hopefully get work afterwards and maybe see what can happen after that? Or I just want the experience and I want to come back home because everything is laid out for me. I'm coming back to a job. My setup is good. I just want the experience. So you have to ask yourself, which one are you? So I hope people are mindful of those things. So the realistic way to look at this, and yes, there are stories where they're full tuition scholarships, but they're few and far in between. And for the US particularly, what I find sometimes schools that may be a bit more generous and have a full tuition scholarship, some of you guys might not want to go that far to get it. You might not like the location of the school. It may be a couple of flights more than you would like to take. So you also have to ask yourself, what type of school environment do I want? Do I want a large school? Do I want a school in a city? Do I want a school where I just need 1 flight, maybe the most 2 to get to? You have to really sit down and think about these things before you just see free money and go and grab it. Okay? So I'm going to take any questions now before I move on to my next point. I'm just going to check the Q&A to see if there are any in there. And remember, folks, feel free to just ask me any questions using the chat or Q&A option located on your Zoom panel. Let me just make sure that okay, there are no questions yet. Okay. Typically, if you are looking at a scholarship right now, the earlier you apply to your schools, the better. So you have to figure out what programs, where, and when. There are some types of programs that do not yield a lot of scholarships either. So I typically find that, for example, medicine is one of them. I'm not sure if you would have noticed this, Juanita, but medicine could be one of those areas because your earning potential might be higher. You might not always find a lot of scholarship offers in certain areas of study. I'm going to pause 1 minute. I see a question coming in. Hi, Daryl. No, if you have a particular question about sports scholarships and the process, you can ask me now. I'll answer it for you. So you can just put it back in the chat or the Q&A, like what you just did. And it depends on which type of sport. So if you want to let me know which sport you're interested in, then I will be better able to answer that, okay? I have another question about the OAS scholarship. So that is offered by the Organization of American States. And typically, I believe I'm speaking subject to correction. They do have some scholarships. You must be applying to an institution in a member state. So it's a country that is a member of the OAS. And also, in some of those cases, you must already be enrolled in your program because that funds, I think, either the last year or the last 2 years of study. So, Shamaria, I hope that was helpful to you. Okay, women's soccer. Well, women's soccer, well, that's a team sport. Well, you first need to contact the coaches of the schools that you're interested in hooking up in meeting. And you should have certain things available to them to view if they're going to be interested in you. So video, stats to show that you're a good player, because why would they consider you? So you need to have certain things together first. And then see who's taking on students, if they're recruiting students from outside of their usual lot as well. I know there are Canadian schools that also take on competitive athletes, but that's when it comes to scholarship is very different from the US and also the UK too. So you have to first reach out to coaches. And I'm not sure which country you're looking at, Daryl, so that will also be a factor that you need to consider. Okay, so someone asked me to repeat what I said about scholarships in medicine. And sometimes I find for medicine, if you are looking outside of the Caribbean, you're looking to study abroad, there are not always a lot of scholarships in that area. Sometimes it might be within the school, maybe after you've gone in, because your earning potential will be higher than somebody going into SOSI. So you have to take these things into consideration when you are thinking about scholarships. I like these questions. Keep them coming, and we're going to get Juanita to answer some of them. So Juanita, one of my first questions to you would be in terms of scholarships for students, especially if they're going to be international students, what type of scholarships are typically available to them?
Yeah, especially when we're thinking about Canada, which is more my specialty, I would say that most Canadian universities provide scholarships that you have to apply to for international students, so they're not automatic, which means that you will need to look on their websites and outsearch which ones you would fit the bill for. Some universities have scale scholarships, whereas others have larger scale scholarships, especially when you're thinking about bigger universities. I'll also say that for York in particular, our scholarships at our entrance level are not faculty specific. So you can be from any faculty, from any discipline, in any program that you're applying to, and you're applying for the scholarship. Also keep in mind in Canada, especially when you're thinking of entrance scholarship, you're applying for the university and the scholarship at the same time. You don't have to be accepted yet. For most of our programs, that's how it is for entrance scholarship, but there's typically scholarships that are also available once you're in your second, third, and fourth year.
Thank you, Juanita, for that. So I hope persons recognize that it's important to apply first, but you don't have to be accepted yet then to apply for any available scholarship. And usually the scholarship notification kit starts after you've applied and set up your own applicant account. So bear that in mind. You're welcome, Shamaria. Okay, now someone on Facebook, Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Are there any UK universities offering scholarships specifically for CARICOM students from Trinidad? Actually, Nicole, we had the Chevening scholarship webinar last Monday, and that deadline has gone. That is a full rate scholarship. You wouldn't have needed an offer letter, but you would have needed to identify at least 3 UK schools you were looking to apply to. It's a process in itself. So you will have to get references. You have to write a motivation statement. There are a few other factors there. However, if you're not going for next year, is an annual scholarship. So you can go on the CupFest website and view the video of that session. And you could find out more about the Chevening scholarship. And so there's a button on the homepage about Chevening. It takes you to that page and you can actually view the whole webinar. So then you could start your prep. If you're not going for 2023, but you're going for 2024, that information will be helpful to you. Okay, Nicole? So I hope that that's one of the main ones. There's the Commonwealth as well, but I'm not sure. You have to check to see if Trinidad qualifies, because I know Barbados no longer does. So you can also check out about those as well. All right. So Jaira is asking where to start looking when searching for scholarships. Any tips for him, Juanita?
I would say like outsource the different universities that you want to apply to. Also keep in mind that the Canadian government does offer scholarships as well. Most universities on their scholarship or awards bursary website will list some of the ones that they would recommend that you apply to. And then I would also look at the CARICOM website, because sometimes there is some opportunities that are there for you. Usually they're research specific or program specific, but they are able to provide you funding for undergraduate as well as postgraduate studies. I've had quite a few students who have had success with that. So again, look at the universities directly, look at the Canadian website, and then also outsourcing some that are in your own country and through CARICOM.
I would reiterate the same thing. So start your search broad and be mindful of any website that when it comes to scholarships that's charging you to apply, to in order to get the information. Just be mindful of that, because usually there are rules in the industry, and if you are looking at assisting students, not necessarily by putting that information on school scholarships, that usually is made available widely and publicly with no cost. Obviously, there are organizations, though, that are set up. A lot of them are nonprofit that might focus on working with students just to find scholarships. There usually are some costs, nominal in some cases, attached. If they're community-based, they tend not to, because they get their funding elsewhere, but you have to be mindful. So, like for example, at the Student Center, we don't promote like scholarships like that. Majority of our students happen to get scholarships, but that's in how they select the schools. And they're not full scholarships, they're partial, and they vary, and you have to earn it. So if you know your grades aren't the best, if you know that you don't have a lot of good extracurricular activities, or you're not doing good leadership stuff or volunteer stuff, why would I want to invest my money in you? Because a scholarship is an investment. Are you a good investment? So you're selling yourself. This is like a business pitch. So you have to think of it that way. What are you bringing to the table? And that's an important question I think people need to ask themselves. Next question. Do I have to do extracurriculars to attain a scholarship? Do you have any scholarships, Juanita, that they have to at York?
Yeah, so we actually take a holistic perspective. So even the scholarships that say they're largely based on GPA, so your grade point average, and you should be, if you're doing the CAPE system, at a 2 or a 1 as your overall score. In those cases, they're still looking at some of those extracurricular activities, which actually works in your advantage, because if you are somebody who's an honor student, but you don't do communication, or you don't do anything related to like community development, you don't do anything related to uplifting this classmates that you're in, or the teachers that you're engaging with, or sportsmanship, sometimes that can be a factor that does affect your communication skills or does affect your people skills. So having a social life and having something you're passionate about outside of school will work in your advantage. Don't feel like you have to be very strategic in your approach when you are thinking about scholarships. We're really looking for you to show us your personality, showcase who you are as a person, and a scholarship application is that opportunity. As long as you're able to have references that can back what you're saying, then we really do enjoy having someone who is diverse from various walks of life. The university are used to 80 students, right? We want to see somebody who's going to be able to have complex people management skills, and bring something different to the table when you're in those tutorials and breakout groups. So I will say, and I actually saw this to some of the folks who came by my table here in Trinidad, as well as when I was in Jamaica a few weeks ago, that this is the rare time in your life where you're able to brag about yourself and people are going to throw money at you. So don't feel shy to talk about some of the things that you're doing, because once you're a big grown woman like me, people don't throw money at you just for bragging about yourself, so make sure that you are highlighting those unique aspects of you. And it doesn't always have to be related to starting an NGO and something very grand. It could be very humble beginnings of you just being there for your older grandparents, or you being a support system to your mom who's a single parent, and you watch over your younger sibling, make sure that they do their homework, you walk them to school. Like, those are things that are absolutely proud achievements, and we want to hear about that in scholarship applications. And I think other universities feel the same way. Those are character skills that we want to see in our classroom. It shows dedication, showmanship, and as Sheena had said, leadership skills.
And as Juanita pointed out, it doesn't have to be restricted to your school, because some of you are involved in different activities that are not related to your school. So some of you might be in church, some of you might be in community activities, or some of you just do things, random things with no strings attached. Like, for example, I know someone who just helped out at a store because it was the neighborhood shop, and they used that as part of their application. Or someone who just started baking because they loved it, and then from that they would start to sell to raise funds for their graduating class. You can be creative. We don't want you to lie though, so just make sure that you're actually doing these things. But you don't have to have a whole 2 pages worth of activities to show that you are making an impact as a human being. So think about a few of the things. They might seem insignificant to you, but when you actually put it on paper and look at it, it would have resonated with someone reading your application. So I hope that was helpful.
One more thing on that note. So although American universities give full-fledged, almost like full-ride scholarships associated with athletics, and Canadian universities don't usually do that. It's very, very, very rare. If you are somebody who plays on a sports team, or you're part of a chess club, although it might not be something that's strategically stated or specifically stated that it is based on athletic ability, that's a great extracurricular activity skill that you could be highlighting as leaderships development skills you're gaining, right?
Yeah, agreed. And even with scholarships for athletes, sometimes while it might be a chunk, there's a shortfall all the time. So that shortfall could be from maybe $1,000 to $20,000. So always be mindful that with scholarships, no matter how full they appear, there's always a shortfall that you might have to definitely cover. All right, so I'm looking at the next question. Are there any age limits when applying for specific scholarships? So Juanita, I'm going to put this question to you. Are any of these scholarships available for you? Are there age limits?
No, there's not an age limit, especially in the undergraduate, but you do, and some of ours have to be still in school. So there are ones that will specifically say this is for first, you'll need to be in high school. And then there's others that are, am I breaking out? Can you hear me?
We're hearing you now. Go ahead.
Okay. There's some scholarships that will specifically say you need to be in high school currently. So a high school applicant who's going into their first year of university, whereas most of them, well, truth be told, most of them are geared towards that, I think, across the board in Canada, but there are some that are for what we call transfer students or mature students. So if you have taken a gap year, if you have done an associate certificate or diploma somewhere else like UE in between, because maybe you didn't have your CAPE Unit 2, then in that case, you would get scholarships that are more so geared towards transfer or mature, which then kind of implicates an age, but not in the same way that you might be thinking, where you can either be too young or too old, but more so where you are right now in life and some of the things that you've done.
Yeah. And for those students that have transfer credits, you got to be mindful of the fact that you coming in with transfer credits can chop your time down overall. And there means that you might pay less over time. And remember what I said, my first piece of knowledge, education is business. So think about it. Schools need to keep the lights on. And so why would they just comp 2 years. If you're only going to spend 2 years, more than likely you'll be spending 2 years worth as opposed to 4 years worth of money. So that in itself, you could look at that as a discount.
Yeah, at York University, even if you haven't done any form of post-secondary, but you have CAPE Unit 2 as a high school student, we accept that as a transfer credit. So you'll get 1 university credit for each CAPE Unit 2 that you're able to score a 3, a 2, or 1 in. So you're able to then cut down your tuition costs and also graduate sooner if you like.
And that is other way to reduce your costs. So I know that we've spoken, it sounds like we're talking about undergrads, but I will cover some master's students. So I have some questions here for about master's in education, curriculum, and instruction. So I'm not sure where you are, Mahendra, which country you're from, however, and I'm not sure which country you're looking at, but at the master's level, this is where it can get interesting. And this also depends on the country that you're looking at. So I would say Canada is an interesting option for graduate school, but it doesn't always work out where all of your degree will be funded, but there are opportunities for funding. And I know in the area of education, over the years, the students I've worked with individually that have looked at those areas of study have been very successful. And they were great students. Let me put that disclaimer out there. Graduated top of the class, had a lot of good research and volunteer or work experience. So combine that, they were able to get substantial awards from certain schools that they applied to, and it worked, especially in the area of education. And so you have to do your due diligence and do your research. And it might mean sometimes not going into a popular province like Ontario. It might mean going further out east in Atlantic Canada, and there are opportunities out there. So you have to do your research. And one thing I would say for any of you persons interested in doing a master's and you're looking at Canada, you need to be adding to scholarship. These are degrees that require you to do research. So think about that. Juanita, you want to add anything to that?
Yes, at York University, we're a really big institution. We're the 3rd largest campus in all of Canada, which means that we really are able to provide some financial backing. And a lot of the times when people think of financial backing, they think of scholarships. And of course, I strongly encourage you to apply to all that are available to you. But being a research assistant or doing work study are also ways for you to cut down the costs. And for master's students in particular, I always advise them to reach out to the professors even before applying. Go to the info session, but reach out to the professors. And it can be as simple as you just saying, oh my goodness, I love the research that you're doing. It's something that I'm very passionate about. Obviously, research what research they've done. Don't just say that, and highlight aspects within it. And then say, if I were to choose you as my supervisor for doing my thesis, doing my dissertation, is there opportunities that you could be someone who could hire me as a part-time employee? Or is there availability that you know of where there's research assistants that are getting funding associated for doing more work in the field that you're already in, or in the research specialty that you're already specializing in? And that will really help you in the long run, not only building a connection, but standing out as an applicant to say you have a professor you want to work out of and they're able to vouch for you, will not only increase your chances of getting accepted, but getting funding even before starting the program. So that's another way of you kind of finding a creative way of finding funding.
And I would recommend strongly that you have a 1-pager of your research interests. So if you have a topic that you are looking to investigate or a hypothesis that you are looking at exploring, use that to go and look at the faculty website, because a lot of universities have their faculty information up and they indicate the areas depending on the type of program you're looking at. And then if some schools go even more specific to say who's taking students, who has spots available for master's students. So you could be a TA or RA, and teaching assistant, depending on how good you are, or a research assistant. Some people get to be both. And minimum wage in Canada, I think, is about maybe upward north of $12 an hour. So in some cases 15. So it depends. So you could earn some money to help with the living expenses. That helps to cut costs down as well. You want to say something, Juanita?
I was just going to say, and in most cases, RAs as well as TAs make more than minimum wage. At York in particular, you'll find postings that are typically within the $20 to $35 per hour range. And you're able to work part-time. And in some cases, especially with the new Canadian policy, international students are able to work now 40 hours, even though they're doing full-time studies, not only during the school year, but also during the summer break. So for individuals who are able to get, especially that RA or TA position, that $30 to $35 mark is very typical.
And it could really put like a dent in your expenses and how much money you can help. You can pay off, you can pay your amenities, it can help put towards rent. So it depends. So some schools might actually have, for some grad programs and some in Canada I've seen, they don't admit you unless they're able to assign funding. So the first thing is to see how they do their intakes. So, and then after you finish your credential in Canada, you are allowed to stay up to 3 years, depending on the length of study. Afterwards to get a postgraduate work permit. So there are opportunities even at the postgraduate level for you to consider. Anything else you want to add, Juanita, or
Yeah, I would just say I have heard from other students and from recent graduates that that was one of the reasons why they chose Canada, is because we're way more friendly when it comes to immigration. It's very common that international students are strategically choosing our country versus our neighbors to the south, for instance, or across the pond, not only competitively with the Canadian dollar being the lower one in comparison, but also our immigration policies are way more welcoming, and we are an underpopulated country. So our government is very open to having students who study here stay longer and continue to contribute to the economy and become Canadian citizens.
and having touched all three countries, I would say each has their own element of interest. So for right now, if you go to the UK and you do a master's, you'll do 1 year, but you could get 2 years worth of staying. Just putting that out there. For the US, it's trickier. So you can get your 1 year optical practical training. If you are in a STEM related designated program, maybe you could get more, but it's up in the air. That might be a little trickier in the US. So for grad students, definitely pay attention to certain things. Look at your return on investment, because it's also an investment. You're not going to get your whole master's for free, but even if you get some scholarships to cover it, there's like a shortfall. So you got to see that how you're going to earn back that money. And at least being in the area that there's a focus, there's a sector that can absorb you, especially if you go to areas where there's a larger private sector. I always say that's a smarter move, that you don't want to be looking to be picked up by the public sector. So be strategic in your choices. So I have another question here. I am from Guyana. Oh, I have an MA in Education Leadership from the UK, but I don't know if it will allow me to read for the MSc Education in Canada. It could be used as a basis of admission. You could. So if you have a UK master's degree and you want to go on and do another master's, but in Canada, but why? If you're moving from, wouldn't you want to do something higher than that? Like logically, you might want to think about that before you do apply to MSc. I'm not sure how old you are, but you might need a logical movement in credential, especially for immigration. So be smart about that.
I
All right.
second.
You gotta be smart about that. Okay, I have a question here. How does one go about getting references for scholarships? Do these references have to come from teachers? Juanita, you want to answer that?
Yeah, from the undergraduate level, it can be from anyone that you are working with, have done any form of work for, or have done studies with. So it doesn't have to be a teacher, as long as it's not a family member or a friend. but someone you've actually worked with in a professional or academic capacity, it's fine. From the master's levels, typically we want 3 references, and one of them is strongly encouraged to be an academic reference. But of course, if you've been in the workforce for X amount of years, let's say 5+ years, it's highly unlikely you've maintained a relationship with a professor that you may have got an A in, right? And an A in their class in. So in that case, we understand if all 3 of your recommendations or your references are professional only. But again, it'll state on the website that they're strongly encouraged. Some programs will say it has to be, but in most cases, there's ways around it if you've been in the workforce, and your work experience can speak volumes in a lot of cases as well. So depending on the program, there might be more preferences to either or.
And thank you for that. I have another question here. I've completed CXC O levels and I'm presently doing a certificate in music at UWA. It's a 2-year alternative to CAPE for music students. Would I be considered as a first time or a transfer student for US colleges? You'd be a transfer technically because you have UE is a post-secondary tertiary level institution. The question would be is whether the certificate in music would be accepted as a basis of admission. So that might need to be evaluated for some US schools. You need an external evaluator to assess your credential to see its equivalency. So
for
just
many
letting you know that.
universities, I will say that going to UE and doing a certificate actually completely wipes out the need for you to do CAPE Unit 2. So if you are interested in getting a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in music, I would strongly recommend that you look at some of the universities. I know costs differentiates versus colleges, but I would strongly recommend that you keep your options open in fine arts, and I'm sure the US has similar admission requirements. So it might be worth to get a degree.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if you're using college to be meaning 4-year degree programs as well, because they have senior colleges that are 4-year schools, and then they have junior, which are 2-year. So when you use colleges, you might need to differentiate for me. Like, are you talking about transferring to a 4-year degree program, Joanne? Or like, I'm not sure. When you use colleges, I'm automatically thinking maybe possibly 2-year. So let me know.
I thought the same. I thought
Yeah.
the exact same, yes.
Okay, so we have another question here. Are scholarships available for co-op programs in Canada? That's an interesting question.
So you're not, I think the question is, if you have a scholarship, can you still do a co-op, and vice versa, maybe? So it doesn't, a scholarship doesn't prevent you from doing a co-op. Getting a co-op doesn't prevent you from applying for scholarships. So yes, you can absolutely do both and get both.
All right, I hope we answered your question. We have another question here. For scholarship opportunities, would you advise going from associates to bachelor's or straight to bachelor's?
Do you want to answer this one?
That's hard. I don't know the context of this question. I need more details. Why you're asking is, are you in high school right now, Shamaria? Give me a little more context, Shamaria.
Yeah, I think it depends on the country. Most scholarships, I'll be honest, at least in Canada, there's more preferences that are given to students who are going straight from high school into post-secondary. Regardless if it's college or university, there's a lot of preference towards being high school to university when you're talking about doing a bachelor's, okay? So in that case, if you're thinking about scholarships and you have the prerequisites, I wouldn't recommend doing an associate certificate or diploma.
It can get tricky
from high school.
Now, if you're thinking about being financially prudent and cutting your costs down, then I would suggest go and do your associates and then transfer out. Like, that would make sense to me once the school that you're doing the associates with is recognized. So yeah. So if you're looking at overall your costs, because remember, you have to financially plan properly, not just rely on scholarships, but if you're looking at the overall costs, then I would say yes. But if you're looking to be more eligible for scholarships, then I would say going straight to bachelor's. If you're coming from high school and you have all the prerequisites, might be smarter. All right, I'm just trying to go through all the questions. Okay, what scholarships are available for students studying green engineering? As I know that climate related studies usually attract funding. Which level of study, Natalie? Give me some more specifics before I answer, please. Meantime, we're going to move on to Alvin's question. I'm interested in information on doing a master's degree in Canada in particular. My daughter has an associate degree in languages for business and tourism. She's currently in her second year at UE, KPhil, doing a double major in French and Spanish. Are there scholarships for language students who are interested in a master's degree in education, tourism, or international relations? I'll give that one to you, Juanita.
Yeah, definitely there is. The master's level, it's a little bit more tricky than the undergraduate. There's definitely more legwork that you have to do to hunt down those scholarships. But yes, there's absolutely scholarships available. I will say in Canada in particular, for your daughter, it's very impressive that she wants to continue on, especially when you're talking about languages within education. And there's a shortage of teachers in the elementary, high school, and middle school level that are able to speak French. As you know, we are a bilingual country. So for students who graduate with, let's say, a concurrent education program at York University in the undergraduate level, a lot of them find after they've completed their teaching degree, which is a 6-year program, they're not employable. They end up being substitute teachers for 5 to 6 years, sometimes longer. Whereas if they are doing our Glendon program where they're learning to be completely bilingual, even if they didn't study French beforehand, they are getting employment almost immediately after graduating. And a lot of our students are getting job offers before graduating because it's just such a sparse gap in our curriculum right now where we're not able to have enough teachers that can actually supplement what's needed in schools. And we have French immersion schools in every province and every city. So she doesn't have to be steadfast in like places like Quebec or New Brunswick or areas that are Acadian, or as we call them, Acadian. So yeah, I think it's really smart and there's definitely funding available for that.
Do your research and definitely do your check-in. Wouldn't hurt if you could do a visit to Canada and do some in-person research as well. That will be helpful. Okay, so I have more coming from Natalie with the green engineering. She's coming from high school. So she wants to know if there's scholarships for students that specifically go into green engineering.
Well, at York, I can speak at York. We're known as the hippie school in Toronto. And that's because we're very big on green energy. We're very big on equity, inclusion, and diversity. And we're one of the top rated schools in areas of sustainability, development, inclusivity, diversity. I think I may have cut out for a second there. I apologize if I did. So long story short, there's definitely aspects within all of our entrance level scholarships where that is strongly encouraged. If you have a strong GPA, I would recommend our President's International Scholarship, which is valued at $180,000. It's a renewable scholarship. That's the total amount you would get over 4 years, as well as our Global Leader of Tomorrow Scholarship, which is valued at $80,000. Those two are specifically based on GPA as well as leadership skills. And again, if you're able to highlight aspects of what you've done already in your community that are related to sustainability and development, that would be fantastic. And it can be as simple as doing beach cleanups, right? So it could be very, very simple, but things that you're already doing that are encouraging environmental savviness, sustainability. And then if you don't have a strong GPA, our Tintia Via Award is valued at $120,000. We actually had a Trini win it this year. That one's also a renewable one. And that particular one has nothing to do with GPA. It is focused on leadership skills. Again, if you're able to tie it to sustainability and development, fantastic. That could be through volunteerism, part-time work. It could be through you being involved in like maybe a student club that's doing, again, beach cleanups or something more innovative. And that one is looking at personal barriers as well. So if there's anything that's preventing you from going to post-secondary specifically related to financial issues, that one's also catered to that. So not GPA.
Thanks for that, and it's good that you were able to tie in some of what York offers. I never heard York as being a hippie school, but that's good to know. Good knowledge to know. And Natalie, I'm not sure which country you're in, but in the event that you are in Barbados, Juanita will be in Barbados this weekend. Saturday and Sunday,
I can't wait.
to all you folks in this chat, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on the Zoom and you are in Barbados, we will have our Cup Fest Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 2, 3 to 6 daily. All right, let's move on to the next question. I'm just searching it. Give me 1 second. Let me find the question.
Yeah, no problem. I apologize if my internet keeps coming in and out as well. There's constant notifications saying it's unstable. So if I'm pausing, it's because I'm hoping you.
That's all right. It's working itself out.
Okay.
Just another question here. How exactly are CAPE grades converted into grade point averages? For example, are grade ones at CAPE worth 1 point? I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's a formula to that. So so they're asking how they convert the CAPE.
Yeah, okay, so typically, and I can't answer for every university, but typically universities will expect for you to have nothing less than a 3. Some will say a 4, but majority will say a 3 is what we would consider a 75% or a B+. That's what we would regard it here in Canada. A 2 is obviously better, and a 1 is exceptional. For more competitive programs, like at York University Schulich School of Business, which is the #1 business school, a 3 will not cut it. You will need a 2 or a 1. It's actually a requirement as the prerequisite for CAPE Unit 2 math. So there's that, as well as our engineering program, specifically our computer engineering program. And on the note of scholarships, for individuals who are interested in computer engineering on the undergraduate level, Shopify will pay your full tuition and also hire you as a part-time employee for the 4 years that you're completing your degree in the engineering program, specifically, again, computer science, and it's the DEV program, that's spelled DEV. We're one of only 3 universities in the whole world and one of only 2 in all of Canada that offers that. But that's on the note of getting funding covered. But again, for those type of programs, very, very competitive. A 2 is strongly encouraged. For more academically focused universities, not to say that York isn't, we're big on research as well, but some that you're seeing in like the Ivy League equivalent, so the Oxfords and the Harvards of Canada, which would be the UBC, as well as the University of Toronto. I would strongly recommend that you're also getting a 2 or a 1 for majority of their programs, because they're strongly applied to, very, very, very competitive and highly ranked for majority of them, especially pre-med. So for Caribbean students out there who are looking for pre-med, and I know it's a very common one, I would also recommend across the board for those bigger universities, York included, if there is a pre-med program, a 2 or 1 is strongly recommended. But yeah, a 3 is a 75, which is a B+.
Right. So, and thanks for that, Juanita. And I hope you caught that. The person didn't put their name. So, so calculating actually off the CAPE is not so simple. However, I know some high schools calculate your GPA and put it on your transcript, but then it still is going to be recalibrated because every school, depending on the country, has a different grading scale. So it's not a simple question to answer, but I hope that you have a range now in terms of how Juanita would have then outlined how York would view CAPE by the grade. So 3 would be 75%, so that's like a B average. So 2 would be obviously in the 80s higher, and then 1 would be above a certain, maybe 89 and up. So you can kind of have a gauge as to how you would rate your scores. Okay, so there are some schools that would go wider across the CAPE band, so they might take a 4, maybe not lower than that, may extend to a 4, depending if the 4 was in a subject that's not a core requirement. So they might not look at it too heavily. But 3 is really recommended for any US. Well, the US and CAPE is a tricky one because some Some don't always use the CAPE. They might go based if you have SATs and CSEC, they would make a decision on those two. Maybe the CAPE might get you some transfer credits because A levels used to get you transfer credits. So it depends. And well, obviously with the UK, CAPE. CAPE, IB, or Cambridge are 2 years in state college or 1 year of university, or 1 or 2 years, depending on the school and how flexible they are. So, okay, a GPA of 3.5 or higher is considered great, especially if you're at UE. And knowing how they're grading is not the easiest grading. It's British pattern style, so it's on a scale. so, yeah, that's is I would say 3.5 is great because that puts you like in upper second, or is close to upper second class honors, which is great. Yeah, that's good. So hope that is helpful. All right, I have a question about PhD in social work, and they're from Trinidad. What opportunities exist for persons interested in a PhD, possibly in social work? I know YART has a social work program, but you can give me more detail, Juanita.
Yeah, for a PhD in social work, typically you have to have a master's that's already linked to social work, all right, as well as work experience in the social work field. Very similar to any PhD, it's very focused on what you've already done in terms of dissertation, research opportunities. Have you been involved in any scholarly journals? These are all things that will help you stand out in your application.
All right, so I have a very intricate question. So I put this one at this time to give you. So this question, the person's asking, is Seneca College recognized by a credible transfer from an advanced diploma to a bachelor's degree in another university for chemical engineering?
Oh, that's a very specific question. I wish that I knew more about Seneca. We do have Seneca at York, so we do have a close relationship with them. And I would say Seneca, Humber, as well as George Brown and Centennial, which are all located in Toronto and the GTA, usually have partnerships with the other universities that are also located in Toronto, but for specific programs. So in some cases, you're able to start the program at Seneca and you naturally branch over. So you graduate with a diploma as well as a degree. For our engineering program, which is the Lassonde School of Engineering, we do not have that partnership, but it's very common that students will come on over. It's not a natural stream though, you would have to apply. And in that case, you would get transfer credits. And that's for all of our engineering, including chemical engineering. I can't speak for University of Toronto or Ryerson University if they do the same.
What I will say from observation, if you're looking at a college to university transfer for particular areas of study, such as engineering, it's important that you work backward. So when you are looking at a college, you need to see up front what articulations they have in place for that specific program, because then that can give you a better idea of which schools you can look at after the fact. And quite frankly, what I have noticed from students over the years that I've worked with doing diplomas from colleges, they go and work right away. They work right away. And they take advantage of that PGWP. And then a lot of them are still there working and more permanent now. Then they go back to school because they know way. So you have to then ask yourself your personal situation. How much am I willing to afford and finance for right now? And how a college might fit into that plan, or would it make more sense depending on where I'm coming from academic wise to go straight into university? And budget impacts a lot of those like answers to be realistic. So you have to ask yourself some questions first. But I have seen good positive transfers. Realistically, there's no clean 2+2. So if that's what you're thinking, usually isn't the case, or 3+2, unless it's actually in a specific articulation that they've outlined already. So you need to ask those questions up front before you branch out. That's what I would suggest. And if you're in Barbados, Seneca will also be at Cup Fest this weekend at the Lloyd Erskine Standiford Center, Saturday and Sunday. So you can visit Shalini at her desk. I'm not sure where else Cup Fest is going in 2023, but if you are here and you're from a different island and you would like a similar setup in your country, let us know. And we will think about which island Cup Fest will come to in 2023. So if you want a Cup Fest, you got to ask for a Cup Fest, right, Juanita?
Yes, yes.
Want a Cup Fest, you ask for one. So let us know. Okay. Can you give more information on where to find you in Barbados over the weekend for Cup Fest? Lloyd Erskine Standiford Center, Natalie. Right there on 2 Mile Hill. And we're going to be walking side. It's probably the only event happening there for this weekend. The guards will tell you where to find us, and you're going to see all the schools on the floor, and the student center team will be on hand to say hello and welcome, enter.
We're all looking forward to seeing you there, and it's not just going to be me, although I cannot wait. I'm probably the most excited to see you. But I think that there's what, 30, maybe 30 different colleges and universities registered from Canada.
Yeah, about that. But in total, I think about 36 or 37 schools on the floor.
See, there you go.
There's a lot of schools. There's a lot
So
of schools.
come on by. And I'm a very big believer in keeping options open and seeing what's out there. This is all about research. And what better way than to actually speak with the recruiter who knows what you need to do in order to get accepted and some of the opportunities that are unique to that school in person.
Yeah. Okay, we have another question coming from, okay, I'm Timel. I'm a Timel trained teacher from Guyana. Can I get a scholarship to study for a bachelor degree in early childhood education? All right.
Can at York University, you can. The Tantia V award that I had talked about, which is valued at $120,000, is applicable for that particular program.
All right. Thank you for that, Juanita. I'm not sure. I would love to come back to Guyana, though. That's the next country I have on my mind, but we'll see how that happens for next year. That's one of my favorite countries to come to. Shamaria is asking, and I'll take one more question after this. Automotive technology or automotive engineering, are these fields easier to get scholarships? I'm not sure if there's any easier field. Is there? Not really.
I can't answer that as a broad general stroke. I think, again, it goes back to if the university you're applying to has faculty specific scholarships or more open-ended scholarships. At York, we have very open-ended scholarships. But for that particular interest, I would say the co-op is also incredibly lucrative. At York, we have partnerships with Tesla, GMC. So if you are interested in doing your co-op, which takes place in second or third year, you can get anywhere between, again, $20 to $35 per hour.
Alvin, St. Mary's is actually going to be on the floor on Saturday. Come on down to the Lloyd Erskine Standiford Center this Sunday and Saturday, 11 to 2, 3 to 6 p.m. daily. You have 2 days to do and ask all the questions you will have. Jaden is asking if Canada gives swimming scholarships.
So there's some universities that have specific scholarships geared towards a varsity sport or varsity team. And then there's others that have athletic scholarships that are, again, open-ended, but they're not at the large scale that our American counterparts have, where it's full ride scholarships. They can be as little as maybe $500, sometimes even smaller, all the way up to maybe 5,000 or probably at most, 10,000, but that's very, very rare. Yeah, but there's other perks that come with being in varsity, like traveling and competing with other universities throughout Canada. So seeing Canada for free. Also, a lot of the times universities will allow for varsity athletes to have first pick at classes because of scheduling conflicts. There's tutors that'll travel with you oftentimes as well to make sure your grades don't drop. You're meeting with academic advisors to make sure you're not going on academic probation. There's also nutritionalists and dietitians that are working with you to make sure you're performing well in that sport. And then when you think about scouting, if you're hoping to go pro, we do have our own professional leagues in football, CFL, hockey, NHL, as well as basketball. So there is scouting that can take place in the university level, so you could go pro. But again, for scholarships, it's not at the large scale that American counterparts offer.
Jaden, if you're a great student, leverage your academics to get in and then join and see if you can try out for the swim team if you're looking at Canada. That's my best advice to you. Also, the CupFest education, CupFest International website has an online school directory. You can visit all the various schools pages, and there's a contact form that you can directly get to the rep on there. So fill it out, ask them your questions. It goes to them, and nudge them if they take too long sometimes, but everybody's traveling right now, but give them a little bit time. It goes directly to the representative for the specific school. So you can ask your questions. These are free tools available to international Caribbean students. So brought to you by the Student Center. So www.cupfestinternational.com. For those who are lucky enough to get to work with me individually, visit the www.thestudentcenter.net to see how you can work with the Caribbean College Planner. We also introduced a new resource as a do-it-yourself resource to apply to schools across Canada, the US, Australia, Ireland, and I can't remember the other country. That's the Caribbean App Center. And you can also go on the website. I'm going to put the website in the chat. We're going to close out shortly. This has been really great, folks. Juanita, thank you for being a trooper. I know this this did not go as planned.
Thanks for
but we
having
worked
me.
with
This
it.
is great. And wow, was that ever a mighty list of different countries that you have scholarship available? That's great.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. But I've been working in this field for well over 10 years, closer to 20 years than 10 years. So not saying my age, but I've been around a while.
And there you have it. She's also a great resource for you guys looking for scholarship opportunities. I feel like she knows quite a lot of them. And I believe you've actually lived in the 3 top countries you mentioned.
Yes, I studied
Yeah.
in the US, I studied in the UK, and I studied in Canada, and I've trained, raised, brought up in the Caribbean. And so don't think that I have any citizenship in these countries. I carry one passport, and as a proud CARICOM passport, my base is in Barbados. And so I can tell you that I've trained, I've worked in student services from the time I was about 18, from the time I started uni. And I got trained professionally, and I do this for a living. I know schools. I travel to countries in September. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, Caribbean College Planner, you saw me visiting about 6 to 7 Canadian schools across 2 different provinces, and we were driving. That was definitely an interesting story that I would tell at a later time. CupFest prior to COVID, that we were held across a couple of countries. So we did a stop in St. Kitts. St. Kitts was the last country we had launched CupFest in 2020 before the pandemic. We're hoping to kickstart to get back out into the different countries. We know that international education is great. We don't just bring overseas schools, we also have Caribbean schools on the ticket. So we are your go-to source for higher education. Keep abreast of our events. Follow me on Instagram, Caribbean College Planner. You can also follow the Student Center on Instagram at the Student Center. Center is the English way, CENTRE. There's always something happening. You won't have as much events coming up after CupFest, but we'll be ramping up next year and going from the beginning to the end again. See which country we might be exploring next. I'm hearing buzz of me going to the UK and visit some schools. So if you want to see see some schools too firsthand through me, follow me on Instagram. I always like to share what I learn. So I hope you enjoy this session. Juanita, don't go, but let me just say goodbye to those on Facebook. Have a good evening, folks. Thank you for staying in. This has been the CupFest theme webinar about understanding scholarships for international students. Wednesday, we have a special session on finance and education. I have some corporate partners that will be on live with me to talk about how to finance your education. And obviously this is when you're about borrowing what facilities, because it can't only be on scholarships. That's a 1 in a million story. You have to be realistic about this. Get a scholarship, get a TA, assistantship, a co-op, get some money in the bank. It's a combination of ways. I've done it, and I can tell you my parents are not rich. So it is possible. So thank you for those joining us on Facebook. Take care.